The fire of doubt and the power of the question. The story begins. Our story doesn't start with a monk in saffron robes, but with a brilliant, restless boy in 19th century Calcutta, Narendranath Dutta. Imagine a young man with a memory like a steel trap and a mind that questioned everything. He wasn't a meek believer. He was a fiery intellectual who devoured Western philosophy, physics, and history. He loved debate, but above all, he loved truth. Narain's greatest struggle was a crisis of faith. He looked at the priests and pundits of his day and saw only dogma and ritual, not genuine spiritual power. His core belief was simple. If God existed, he must be verifiable, like a scientific principle. He became known for his single, powerful question, posed to every spiritual leader he met. Sir, have you seen God? Every single time, the answer was a shaky evasion, leaving Narain disappointed and pushing him closer to outright atheism. Then, the universe shifted. Narain was led to the humble compound of Sri Ramakrishna Paramahansa at Dakshineswar. Ramakrishna was everything Narain was not. Simple, uneducated in the Western sense, yet possessed of an undeniable spiritual serenity. Narain, sharp as a razor, looked at the quiet man and posed his famous question. Ramakrishna's answer was delivered with absolute conviction. Yes, I see him as clearly as I see you, only in a much deeper sense. And I can show him to you. Imagine the shock. This was the answer Narain had sought for years. Yet, his sharp logic immediately suspected a fraud, a madman. What followed was a period of intense, often arrogant, testing. Narain would mock Ramakrishna's ecstatic states and relentlessly question his philosophical explanations. But the master never reacted with anger, only with unwavering, profound love. Slowly, reluctantly, Narain's steel armor began to crack. He saw the genuine, untainted love and spiritual purity radiating from Ramakrishna. He realized that the greatest truth was found not in books, but in the living, transformative experience of the master. The brilliant skeptic surrendered to a love he could not explain, choosing conviction over comfortable doubt. This moment, the transformation of the greatest critic into the most dedicated disciple, was the true birth of the Swami. The fire of renunciation and the vision of service. The story continues. We now enter the transformative period of discipleship. Narain, the privileged, logical student, was thrown into a furnace of spiritual training at Dakshineswar. Ramakrishna's method was not about reciting scriptures. It was about breaking the ego and uniting the intellect with the heart. Ramakrishna saw Narain's potential, a world conqueror, and trained him not for passive devotion, but for action. The master instilled in him the groundbreaking idea of Shiva Jnane Jiva Seva. Serving humanity is worship of God. This revolutionized Narain's thinking. Spirituality wasn't about escaping the world. It was about serving in the world. This new motto, that service to the poor was the highest form of worship, would become the bedrock of the entire mission. Then, darkness fell. In 1886, Sri Ramakrishna passed away. The loss was devastating, but it forged the disciples into a brotherhood. Ramakrishna, in his final moments, formally entrusted the entire group to Narain, marking him as the spiritual successor. They pooled their meager resources, formalized their brotherhood in an old, run-down house at Birnagar, and took the final, solemn vows of monasticism. Narain chose the name Vivekananda, the bliss of discernment, the name that would soon shake the world. But Vivekananda knew he couldn't lead from the confines of a monastery. He felt a deep, urgent need to understand the soul of his country. He decided to leave everything, his brothers, his new home, his security, and become a Parivrajaka, a wandering monk. For 3 years, he walked the length of India, often without food, shelter, or a destination, relying only on chance and the hospitality of strangers. This was his real-world university. He slept in peasants' huts and in the courts of Maharajas. He saw India's magnificent spiritual heritage, but he also saw the crippling, soul-crushing poverty of the masses. The fire in his heart shifted. It was no longer just about personal enlightenment. It was about the suffering of his motherland. He felt the profound burden of a nation's pain, preparing him for the gigantic task ahead. The ocean of pain and the divine strategy. The story intensifies. The great wandering brought Swami Vivekananda to the absolute geographical and spiritual edge of India, Kanyakumari. In this southern tip, where three great oceans meet, lies a rock just offshore. In December 1892, Vivekananda swam out to that rock and sat down to meditate. This was not a personal retreat. It was a meditation on the destiny of India. For 3 days, he did not seek personal bliss. He sat with the crushing weight of the nation's poverty, ignorance, and degradation. He saw the root cause of India's fall, the neglect of the masses. It was on that rock that his mission crystallized into a brilliant, strategic plan. He realized that India had the spiritual wisdom the West desperately needed, but the West had the material resources and science India needed for upliftment. The solution was an exchange. Take the treasure of Vedanta to the West and bring back the material support and knowledge to uplift the poor in India. This was his divine strategy. But how could a penniless, unknown monk execute such a mission? As if destiny itself was arranging the steps, Vivekananda was informed about the upcoming World's Parliament of Religions in Chicago, 1893. This was the perfect platform for his message, but the logistics were impossible. He had no official invitation, and critically, he had no money for the months-long journey. His supporters, particularly the enlightened Maharaja of Khetri, who formalized the title Vivekananda, saw the fire in his eyes and recognized his genius. They pooled their resources, an incredible act of faith, to buy him a ticket. Vivekananda knew he was no longer traveling for himself. He was the ambassador of a silent, suffering civilization. He boarded the ship, a lone monk with a singular mission, sailing toward an unknown future on the other side of the globe. The quiet, questioning boy from Calcutta was about to give the world a voice. The lion roars, standing ovation in Chicago. The story climaxes. The year is 1893. Swami Vivekananda arrives in Chicago months before the parliament is due to start. He is utterly alone, penniless, and misunderstood in the sprawling, alien landscape of America. He was cheated of his few remaining funds and found himself sleeping in empty railway freight cars, begging for food. This was the spiritual ambassador of India, tested by hunger and cold, just weeks before his moment of destiny. He finally reached the venue, only to be told he was too late to register. Exhausted, he collapsed in a nearby park, praying for guidance. Providence, however, was already working. A wealthy woman, recognizing his spiritual aura, took him in and secured his entry to the parliament. September 11th, 1893. The Parliament of Religions was packed with thousands of delegates and dignitaries. Speaker after speaker delivered formal, dry, and often sectarian lectures. Vivekananda's turn finally came near the end of the day. He walked to the podium, a figure of silent, fiery intensity in his brilliant saffron robes. He ignored the prescribed formula of address. He looked out at the vast crowd and began with three simple, revolutionary words: "Sisters and Brothers of America." The hall erupted. A massive, sustained standing ovation lasted for 2 full minutes. The audience was struck not just by his charisma, but by the profound love and universality in those words. When the silence returned, Vivekananda began to speak about the mother of all religions, Vedanta, and the acceptance of all faiths. He didn't preach. He declared the unity of humankind. The effect was instantaneous and electrifying. The New York Herald declared, "Vivekananda is undoubtedly the greatest figure in the parliament." He became an instant celebrity, lecturing to huge crowds across America and Europe, spreading the gospel of strength, self-reliance, and tolerance. He used his fame not for personal gain, but to raise the banner of India's spiritual strength and to gather resources for his mission back home. The final message and the unstoppable legacy. The story concludes. In 1897, Swami Vivekananda returned to India after his conquering tour of the West. His return was nothing short of a royal procession. The wandering monk was now a national hero. His message upon his return was not spiritual, it was national and motivational. He didn't ask the youth to retreat to the Himalayas. He asked them to build muscles of iron and nerves of steel. He told them, "Arise, awake, and stop not till the goal is reached." This was a call for inner strength, social upliftment, and confidence in their own heritage. His immediate priority was action. He founded the Ramakrishna Mission in 1897, formalizing the goal of serving God and man. The mission was built to run schools, hospitals, and relief efforts, a perfect fusion of spirituality and practical service. It proved that Vedanta was not just philosophy, it was a blueprint for social reconstruction. His life, however, was burning brightly but quickly. Despite declining health due to nonstop work and extensive travel, he continued to pour every ounce of his energy into inspiring his disciples and consolidating the mission. On July 4, 1902, at the young age of 39, Swami Vivekananda consciously gave up his body in a state of deep meditation. His life was short, but his achievement was colossal. He had brought India's spiritual message to the world stage, awakened a generation to self-belief, and established an organization dedicated to service. His legacy is not just historical, it is fiercely alive today. He is the original life coach, teaching us that the entire universe is within us, and all the power we need is simply waiting to be unleashed. He showed us that the greatest form of worship is active, loving service, and that the only barrier to success is the doubt in your own mind. The lion of Vedanta may have left his body, but his roar, the call to arise, awake, continues to echo through the ages. Subscribe to this channel now to make his message a permanent part of your daily motivation and English learning.